Hi everyone, today I'm here to talk about The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, or as we call him, Jolkin Rolkin Rolkin Tolkien. So, for those of you that probably have heard of Lord of the Rings but maybe don't know what The Silmarillion is, The Silmarillion is basically a prequel slash beginning of Middle Earth story. So like a prequel to everything basically before the Lord of the Rings, and how Middle Earth and just the world of the Lord of the Rings and of J.R.R. Tolkien's world was formed, as in like from the beginning. So it starts with the gods of his world actually making the world. And I really like the Silmarillion. I've read it before a very, very long time ago, and I don't think I really retained anything except that Morgoth, who is the Dark Lord and who basically was Sauron's master, is bad. And that's pretty much all I remembered. I didn't really remember much of the stories except for a little bit of Beren and Luthien. So it was really fun to get back into it and see if I enjoyed it as an adult and what I thought of it. If you are a really big Lord of the Rings fan, I totally suggest it. Even if you just kind of like fantasy, I think I would also suggest it as well. However, let me give you a couple of thoughts that I have, maybe a little couple pointers. The book starts out really, really, really slow. Like I said, it starts out with gods forming the world, and so it's kind of like if you know of the Bible or any sort of Christian mythology, it's kind of like the first chapter of the Bible where God creates the earth in 7 days or 6 days and rests on the seventh, whatever. Except that is spread out over so much time because he has a pantheon of gods. It's not like a monotheistic thing where there's just one God. And so he has to go through and introduce all of them and this person and that person and them and them. And honestly, not all of them are important to the story. In fact, once the gods kind of go away in the story, like two of them come back and are like mentioned a little bit, but like all of them aren't really there. So the beginning of the Silmarillion is super, super hard to get through. And honestly, I didn't give a crap. I don't really care about really long things that read like the Bible, because it kind of does. Like, I've read the Bible. I grew up in a Christian family. I'm not really interested in having to deal with that stuff again. So that was kind of hard. And like, just in general, even if you don't come from that background, it's hard just because of how slow it is. However, there are also a lot of really, really great stories that I super enjoyed in the Silmarillion, like the story of Beren and Luthien, which is one of my favorites. And P.S. anyone who's like, there's not strong women in Tolkien's literature, go read Beren and Luthien, and you'll see how strong Luthien is because Beren wouldn't have survived without her. So, ha to you, detractors. And sorry, I just like, went on a little tangent there. So the story of Beren and Luthien is really good. I love the story of the Children of Húrin, which is also a book that was published posthumously, and I actually highly suggest the Children of Húrin. I really liked that one as well. And the story of the fall of Gondolin, and all the like dark things that Sauron is doing in this was really cool to me because Morgoth technically is the main bad guy in this, and he's doing his own thing. But, for example, in the story of Beren and Luthien, it's Sauron first who captures Beren and does, like, a bunch of things in that story. And so that was super fascinating to see the background of Sauron and how everyone's always like, yeah, Morgoth is stronger, which, like, technically he is. But I felt like Sauron was also doing a lot of the bad stuff in this, which kind of just gave him more of a backstory for the Lord of the Rings. So there's heaps of good stories within the Silmarillion, just some of it is so long. As I was reading it as well, and I've actually thought this, I think that the elves in the Lord of the Rings are just like a-holes. They're just like superior, like they have this like mega superiority complex. They think they're like some ubermensch because they were like the first people made by the gods and la-di-da-di-da, and like they're just jerks. Like they're racist jerks to everyone in Middle Earth. They're just like, oh, you're human? Like, and I'm like, WTF elves, because P.S. the humans do like a lot of stuff, or like in the Lord of the Rings. If you've just seen the movies, you'll maybe think differently. But even in them, I'm like, Elrond basically doesn't really do anything. Galadriel just kind of stays in Lothlorien and does nothing. In the movies, the elves come to Helm's Deep. In the book, it's the Rangers, Aragorn's like peeps. So I'm like, the elves do like Jack S. in the series. Like, they're just like, oh, we live here, but we also have the privilege, because we're privileged elves, of going back to the Undying Lands because the gods like us better. And I'm just like, what the heck? And yes, like, I thought the gods were a-holes, I thought the elves were a-holes. Not like, obviously not every person in the book is great, and like, there were elves that did good things, but I was like, in general, the elves in the Lord of the Rings are just like racist a-holes who are like, we were the first people made, so we're the best. Like the mega European complex, basically, where they're like, we're white Europeans and we're superior to everyone because we knew how to build castles. And I'm like, so that was very interesting, because I already didn't think highly of the elves, and then I read the Silmarillion and I think even less of them. So, but very, very interesting. There's lots of stories, just like a lot of bad people. Like, I feel like there's like not actually that many good people in the Silmarillion. So that was kind of interesting to read a book where basically you're kind of like, this character's a jerk and this character's a jerk, and Baron and Luthien are cool and this person's a jerk and this person's a jerk. So yeah, very, very long, not a lot of like good characters in the like the moral sense. I'd say there's a lot of interesting characters and fascinating characters throughout the book. And there's lots of characters, by the way. Like, I could not keep track of everyone. There is a list in the back. There's like a, I'll show you little family trees and stuff back here, but I just kind of like reading it. Let me kind of find it real quick. So like, there are these family trees in the back that you can totally reference, at least in my version. I don't know if they're in every version, but mine did have family trees and stuff that you could reference, because it does get a bit confusing, because it goes through years and years of the history of this world. So yeah, that's the Silmarillion. Elves are a-holes. Sauron and Morgoth are busy doing bad things. It's very, very slow at first, but has a lot of good stories. And it's mildly upsetting to me. Here's the thing. I'm going to read all the Lord of the Rings books. So I start with the Silmarillion. I'm going to read The Hobbit, and then like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So I haven't read the appendixes to the Lord of the Rings. Hang on. Now I'm curious. I'm like, was there an appendix to this? Because I just finished it the other day and was just like, I'm so excited to read The Hobbit. There is like an appendix, but it's just like names of things. So not really like stories, because I know a lot of Tolkien mythology is held in the appendixes of the Lord of the Rings as well. But this new Rings of Power show, I'm just going to delve into that, because like, WTF, like, Galadriel is in the Silmarillion. She's mentioned a handful of times, like maybe 5. Like, she's not really in it, and maybe she's more in the appendixes. Like I said, I haven't gotten to them, but she's like a main character in the new Rings of Power thing. And like I said, it's just because they're like, oh, we need a strong female character for Lord of the Rings, and who's it going to be? Oh, it's going to be Galadriel, because why not? And I'm like, can you just like read the books and take stories from the books and make good stuff, instead of just like making up your own BS? Because it actually talks about the forging of the rings in the Silmarillion. I don't know if it talks about more of it in the appendixes to the Lord of the Rings. I'll find out when I read them. But I'm just like, come on, guys. Like, freaking use the material. Like, if you're going to take an author's work, use it. Like, it just annoys the crap out of me. I don't... Especially for something like so famous and like so important in the history of like the fantasy genre and stuff like that. Like, stop effing it up with your own BS crap. Like, it just, yeah, it just annoys me. So read the Silmarillion. Read the source material. Read the source material, okay? Don't just believe everything you be watching on Amazon. And I know it's not a real world, but still, as someone who likes to write myself and who hopes to be a published author one day, I really hope people never F with my stuff like they have with like freaking Disney's Star Wars crap and this new Rings of Power BS. So my thoughts might change after I read Lord of the Rings and the appendixes, but I doubt it. So, like, is Galadriel really in there being like some weird warrior lady? I don't know, because she basically does nothing in the Silmarillion. So, yeah. Anyway, read the Silmarillion. It's really good. I'll obviously do reviews of like The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy once I finish those. But just because I like to end with questions, do I like the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy by Peter Jackson? And I do. I watched them before I read the book, so that might bias me a little bit, but I think one main thing that people complain about with the movies is that Tom Bombadil wasn't in them, and he doesn't really do anything to progress the story forward. So you can cut him out. Like, he's just there to prove that there are beings in Middle Earth that aren't affected by the ring. And I understand as well that, let's see, it's Merry who gets his enchanted sword that eventually, like, helps kill the Nazgul King, right? From the experience with Tom Bombadil, but he could have just as easily got that at, like, Rivendell or something. And so a lot of, like, diehard Tolkien fans are like, why wasn't Tom Bombadil in there? I'm like, the movies, even the theatrical versions, are already 3 hours long, right? And he really doesn't do anything to progress the story forward. Like, there is no point in Tom Bombadil being there for the story's progression. For fun, sure. For the story's progression, not really. And so when you're trying to adapt something for screen, it helps to actually take some things out if not needed. Especially when you're adapting something that is that long and that massive and that much of an undertaking. So I love the Lord of the Rings films directed by Peter Jackson. They put so much effort into, like, the world building, the details, the CGI, the effects. Like, I just think that they're awesome, and I wish that the Rings of Power put more effort into it. I haven't seen it, actually. I've just watched trailers, and in my opinion, there's way too much crappy CGI, and their armor looks too clean, and things look too pristine. And I'm just like, Amazon, come on. You're a bazillion-dollar company. Like, let's put some effort into it. But yeah, that's the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I actually do suggest it if you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings. I think it's fun. Some people are like, I don't need to know the history of the world of the Lord of the Rings. Like, I don't care about that. And I'm like, cool. Like, you don't have to. It's a made-up world. But I think the Silmarillion has some good stories, and it's super fun. And it does actually end with the forging of the rings and kind of a little summary of the Third Age and the War of the One Ring. So, yeah, I highly suggest it if you're a Tolkien fan and you can get through it. Totally go for it. Thank you so much for listening. Like, subscribe, comment down below. Do you like the movies? Have you read the Silmarillion? What do you think? Do you think elves are a-holes? Let me know. What do you think about the new Amazon series? Like, I know a lot of people like it. That's kind of whatever. I'm super picky about things that are adapted from books. So, yeah. Thank you so much for listening, and you all have a great day.